Penjale taj pralale. Pahtalo oktoto aprili. O romano lumiako dives. 50 years ago, in the midst of the Cold War, Roma leaders gathered in London to proclaim self-determination and transnational unity among us, the Roma. At the first World Roma Congress, they agreed on symbols of our unity. The blue and green flag with a red wheel, under which we stand, all of us, with pride, and sing Jelem Jelem, our anthem in Romanes, our language. These symbols have unified our people and our cause of self-determination for 50 years. They represent a political gift that my generation inherited from the previous one. What political legacy will my generation leave behind for the next one? In short, we should reinforce the transnational movement with the strongholds in our communities. We should continue building the Roma nation and unify Roma leadership around new moral foundations. Let me explain each of these. First, in order to strengthen our transnational unity and political engagement, we have to build local strongholds. In the last 50 years, we have relied on international organizations to change the way governments treat us. In the name of nothing about us without us, our more major Roma-led organizations like the International Roman Union, IRU, and the European Roma and Travelers Forum, ERTF, built their relevance on consultative roles in the United Nations and the Council of Europe. In a similar way, the European Roma Information Office and the European Roma Grassroots Organization continued this tradition within the European Union institutions. All of these organizations, together with many other advocates, have raised concerns about our situation and recommended solutions. However, the member states of these international organizations, such as the European Union, Council of Europe, United Nations, have never really taken the situation of Roma or our recommendations as a matter of urgency. In good times, sometimes between the fall of communism in 1989 and the financial crisis in 2008, governments expressed declarative commitments because they needed the United States, the European Union, United Nations, and other international organizations for funding and security. Today, now, especially since 2008 financial crisis that strengthened populism and the far right, member states are undermining the international organizations. For example, Hungary and Poland challenged the very foundation of the European Union, such as the rule of law. The United Kingdom has left the European Union, and Russia has caused a serious crisis in the Council of Europe. So looking at these developments, I have no illusion that we can rely on the organizations, international organizations only, to have a bigger influence on national governments. The reality is that the national governments make the decisions in international organizations. Therefore, we have to reorient ourselves towards the building of national and local power bases in our communities. Of course, this is easier said than done, but it is unavoidable and fundamental. The second task for my generation is to continue the project of unifying the Roma across national borders, kinships, religions, languages, or any other differences. In the last few decades, Roma unity, as proclaimed in 1971, has been under a new pressure. Besides forced assimilation by ethnic majorities or other minorities, tensions have grown between Roma on the one side and some Ashkali, Egyptians, Sinti, and travelers on the other side. Some of the spokespeople of these groups have different starting points, but they reach the same conclusion. They do not want these groups to belong to the Roma nation. I leave the content of their arguments to the historians, linguists, anthropologists, but let us be clear about this. Any identity is a shared construction, a unifying idea. The borders between us and them are always challenged. In our case, the Congress from 71 defined symbols that unify the Roma nation. Everyone has the freedom to embrace these or not. However, it is morally inconsistent to reject Roma belonging and at the same time to use it to gain funding, political positions and opportunities. Moreover, calls by a few people to change our common name are unacceptable because they take us backward and annul, erase the proclamations of the 1971. In favor of their arguments, some people, activists, policymakers, say that we all suffer from the same problem: racism against the Roma or anti-Gypsyism. This is indeed a valid rationale for building a coalition around public policies. However, since 1971, we have been seeking unity and self-determination not because of anti-Gypsyism, but in spite of it. In other words, racism is just one of many obstacles in our way, but our cause is bigger than the anti-Gypsyism. Finally, the third task for our generation is to unify Roma leadership around new values. In the early decades after the first Congress, the number of Roma leaders was small, so maybe it was sufficient to unify only around Roma identity and Roma belonging. But is this sufficient today? It is not, because today there are many who speak on behalf of Roma, especially on social media. The challenge today is how to recognize the difference between those who hide corruption, hypocrisy, incompetence behind demagogy and populism, and those on the other side who are Roma patriots with integrity, consistency, and competence. For example, elected Roma leaders have representative legitimacy. That's true. However, after 50 years, we have enough experience to recognize the difference between those who have put the collective interest above the personal benefit and those who have not. We have also learned to distinguish between those who have the ability to use the power and opportunity to advance collective cause and those who do not. We have also seen these differences not only among the politicians, but Roma civic organizations. Other examples are religious leaders who have much more trust and credibility among our people than elected and civic leaders. Some put abortion causes before the Roma cause and in that way support the right-wing politics that also promotes racism. Some others prioritize religious identity at the expense of Roma identity and in that way lead towards assimilation or further divisions among the Roma. Some other religious leaders use Roma identity to isolate Roma from politics so that others make decisions over our lives without us. At the same time, we also recognize noble and inspiring religious leaders who demonstrated consistency between religious values, our unity, identity, and our struggle. So for this reason, my generation has to unify Roma politicians, religious leaders, civic advocates, artists, journalists, workers, and people in business and sports who live by the following values. The first is the value of public integrity, or putting collective interest above personal gain. It is much easier for us to demonstrate integrity on the streets or on Facebook, but it is much more important and difficult to demonstrate it when we have a degree of power and opportunity. The second is the value of consistency between our words and our actions. Anyone can speak nice words about justice and equality, but we cannot claim equality for Roma while suppressing Roma women. We cannot pray God, who loves and protects all people, and at the same time support the politics of racists, misogynists, Islamophobes, or homophobes. The third value is competence. Many know how to describe the problems and speak about them, but only a few strive for knowledge and skills to find real solutions and lead others towards them. So, when we look back, we can see that the 50-year legacy of the first Roma Congress has been shaped by the Cold War, democratic transitions, and financial crisis. Today's world is being shaped by populism, COVID-19, climate change, artificial intelligence, and many other challenges. Building on their legacy for my generation and responding to the challenges of our times, we have to grow a transnational movement with local strongholds, continue unifying the Roma nation across different borders, and unify the Roma leadership with public integrity, competence, and consistency. These are the foundations of a new Roma politics that my generation must build for the next one to take over and lead forward. Opre Roma!